royalty. But Jesus is here. I dabble in Facebook, and after making many mistakes on Facebook, this morning I posted, preaching at Palominas, no building, but isn't it great, and I'm butchering my quote. I typed it less than 4 hours ago, but I'm butchering my own quote. Isn't it great that they can look at each other and say, Jesus is here? So we're the church. We are the church. And wherever we are, 2 or 3 of us, there's Jesus. Okay? So it's kind of cool. I kind of like that. You know, I'm telling you, you've been at church for a while, I imagine. I don't know very much about your history. But I'm telling you, the headaches that buildings causes. The headaches that buildings causes. And I'm not discouraging you or encouraging one or another. But we are the church. So always keep that to account. We want to meet each other's needs. And of course, as Don pointed out, we want to meet community members' needs. Okay, that's what we're all about. We're salt, we're light. Okay, so I'm going to begin with this. I know I'm dealing with an educated populace here. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height. By the way, that's Ephesians 3:18. My soul, I'm ruining the poetry by giving biblical references in the middle of it. I apologize. Let me start all over. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depths and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. And if God choose, I shall love thee better after death. So some people attribute it to Shakespeare, but who is it? Elizabeth Barrett Browning, okay? An English poetess of the 19th century, okay? Ephesians 3:18, Lamentations 3:23. We sing that song based on that, which is, thy mercies are new every morning. That's in there. Did you hear it in there? Psalms 139:18. This deserves reading. I always read the Psalms, folks. I camp out in the Psalms. Psalms are just a wonderful book, wonderful. When I was pastor at Douglas Tabernacle, that's what we did Wednesday night. So we just marched through the Psalms. And we didn't get to 119, the longest chapter of the Bible. But I did do the shortest Psalm. Anyway, Psalms 139, 18. Some of you are already there. Let's begin with verse 17. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. That's in there. And believe it or not, 1 Corinthians 13 is in that poem. Now, I have no idea whether Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, whether she was a believer or not. The experts believe that that was written about her husband. We're going to talk about agape love. In the Old Testament, the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Old Testament, okay? The word agape is used for all kinds of love, whether that be the love between friends, phileo, okay? Whether that be the love between a man and a woman, whether that be physical love, whether that be family love, okay? And of course, love from God to us, and love from us to others, okay? So we're going to, today I'm going to lay the groundwork, with the permission of some wise men among you, I have 3 sermons worth of material today. So I promise to do only a third. Okay? I promise to do only a third. Okay? So today, by way of introduction, and then we'll talk Old Testament next week, and then the next week we'll get to the New Testament, okay? But we will talk about some common things. Once again, I want to apologize for repeating, but you know what? The essence of good teaching, and you fellow educators know this, is repeat, repeat, repeat. They just need to hear it again and again and again, and then somehow, through one of their senses, it gets into their brain, and they might be able to synthesize or apply it, okay? So we're going to cover some things that we've already talked about. So my main passage today will be 1 Corinthians 13, okay? So if you'd like to turn there. But I will make reference to a lot of passages as we go, okay? And you people taking notes. So this is Love Palomina style. How's that for a title? Love Palomina style. As I've already said, the Old Testament term for love in the Septuagint, that is translated by the New Testament word agape, is, the noun form is, now you see, Hebrew has gutturals in it. 2 things I can't do, gutturals, and I cannot roll my R's, okay? So don't expect me to speak any Spanish well, okay? I know enough Spanish to get into trabajo, okay? I know enough Spanish to get into trouble. All right, so the noun form of this word is Abba. Ba, there's a guttural in there. And this sounds like the wicked king of the northern kingdom, Ahab. All right, so that's the verb form, Ahab. It's just A-H-A-B. And as I said, those words are used in the Old Testament, translated by agape with the Greek version of the Old Testament, okay? By a man to a woman, parents to children, family love, friendship love, physical love. When David mourns the death of, who was Saul's son again? Who was Saul's son? Jonathan. When he mourns the death of his friend, a very close friend, okay? Best friends, BFF forever. Why don't I know? He uses the word, I love you, in 2 Samuel 1:26. He says such phrases as, your love for me was wonderful. I grieve over you. You are dear to me. Okay? That's that word that we use for agape. Okay? But it's also that word Ahab in the Hebrew. In Proverbs 17:9, to foster love covers an offense. To foster love covers an offense. That also is that word, agape. Okay? So when someone offends you and you don't take it to heart, you are exercising this agape kind of love, according to the Septuagint writers of the Old Testament. Okay? And then in Song of Solomon, the bride says in 8:7, many waters cannot quench love. Some of you are familiar with that passage. And then it says you can't buy it. Any money that you would pay for this kind of love would be scorned. Now, Song of Solomon, I do believe that it has a double entendre. Song of Solomon is talking about the physical love between a king and his bride, but it's also talking about God's love for the church. We are the bride. And as I reminded you the first day or the second day I was with you, I am a teacher who's acting as a bridesmaid. That's my job. My job is to make sure that this bride does things orderly. Okay? That's my job as a pastor. Okay? Of course, we all have that responsibility. Okay? But I am a bridesmaid. So many waters. So what do I learn from these first references? Well, first of all, Jonathan's love was not sexual, so it's more wonderful. He actually says in that verse, 2 Samuel 1:26, he says, your love to me was greater than the love of a woman. That's what he says in that passage, okay? So it's more wonderful than that, okay? So it's beyond sex. It's beyond, whatever agape is, whatever this Hebrew word is that we translate as agape in the Septuagint, it has that kind of meaning. But it also denotes forgiveness from that Proverbs verse I gave you, okay? It's concerned about unity and harmony. Whatever love is, it's concerned about unity and harmony, okay? It's the kind of love that says, I will sacrifice my rights as an individual for the rights of the group. Remember the Star Trek movie with Spock, when Spock dies? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That was an example of agape. When the bride says many waters can't quench love, it's talking about its indomitable spirit, its overpowering ability. You cannot fight true love. When you see love happen, when you see acts of love happen, it's a wonderful thing that we meet the needs of the community. It's a wonderful thing, okay? And God is glorified. God is glorified. And it wins. I've told you before, sin is the most destructive thing in our lives, but love is the most powerful antidote for that. Love is the most powerful antidote. It is priceless. You can't pay enough. If you tried to pay for love, so it's, according to Proverbs, it's akin to wisdom. You should desire love as much as you desire wisdom. Now, I don't know about you, but I need wisdom. I can't walk through this day and deal with the people who come at me, because some of them seem really crazy to me. I don't know if you notice that people out there, they seem kind of crazy. You gotta, and you don't know how they're going to take anything, so you've got to watch your words, and you've got to be very, you got to tread lightly. So I should desire to love as much as I desire that wisdom. It's also akin to truth. Warren Wiersbe says it's the most powerful force in our lives, and I agree with him. So we need to know a little bit more about this. This is why I can't talk to you about it in one sermon. There's too much. It's faceted. It's a diamond, okay? You look at it from different angles and you see different things. So today I just want to do introduction. So I want to read two verses. Here's how I know Abba and agape are the same word, because 1 Peter 4 verse 8. 1 Peter 4 verse 8. Let me read this. Now Peter's a Hebrew, one of the inner three in Jesus' circle, and he says this. Verse 7, the end of all things is near, therefore be alert and sober mind so that you may pray. And then in verse 8 he says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. There it is. You want to cancel the effect of sin in your life, or the effect of sin from others in your life? The most appropriate response is agape, love. Okay, if you want to cover that. Cover, of course, means forgive, but I think it has a deeper meaning as well. Well, guess what Peter is quoting here? Peter's actually quoting a verse from Proverbs. Proverbs 10, verse 12. All right? Proverbs 10, verse 12. Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all sins. Love covers all wrongs, is how another version says it, okay? So if you want to fight fire with fire, if you want to undo the destructive tendencies, because that's what it's all about. It's all about when Jesus comes, he's going to set things right. The fall in the garden destroyed everything. Destroyed the way God wanted it to be. But thank God Jesus Christ came, and what he's trying to do, he's trying to redeem everything. But it says in Romans, it said the whole creation waits in travail until the glorious revealing of the sons of God. So until that day comes, this planet, it's a beautiful day. It really is a beautiful day. But it's nothing like the glory of heaven. It's nothing like the glory we will encounter when we see Jesus face to face. It says in the book of Revelations, it says, there's no need for a sun there, because Jesus and the Lord himself will be our light. is a created thing out there, this ball of gas that we call the sun. That's a created thing. We will see face to face the person who put it there. So, using those two verses, let's talk about what the New Testament term agape suggests. First of all, it's unselfish. It is not, I'm going to tell you a test for love in a few minutes here. It is not, it doesn't elicit a response from its object. It's undeserved without thought of return. By the way, those other loves I mentioned, there are 7 other Greek terms for love. Phileo, I've already talked about. Friendship love. Eros, which you can imagine. Physical love. C.S. Lewis writes a book called The Four Loves. I highly recommend it. I've lost my copy. I wish I could find it. If you have a copy, lend it to me. Storge, which is family love. Ludus, which is playful, childish love. Mania, which is obsession. Pragma, which is the love of old age couples. Pragma, when the romantic fires have burnt less, and you accept the fact that this person is committed to you because they've been through hell and high water with you, and you know they got your back and you got theirs. That's what we're talking about there. And of course, philato, which is self-love, which is good or bad. Good or bad. You know, self-love. But agape is unselfish esteem of the object loved. It is undeserved without thought of return. It is able to produce a reciprocal response in its object, but it doesn't expect it. So here's the test question to see if you are acting in agape love. It's a very simple question. If you want a response from the love object, it's probably not agape. If you want a response for your actions, it's probably not agape. It is selfless love. It is decided by the subject. It has nothing to do with the object. That's why it's so hard for us. So I want to state 5 truths that I think are true, then we'll dabble into 1 Corinthians 13 in the middle of this. First of all, love depends upon knowledge or experience. Whether you call it head knowledge, whether you call it experience, whether you call it heart knowledge, you can't love something you haven't been exposed to. You can't love what you don't know. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 13. Some of you are still parked there. So let me bring out some things there. Verses 1 to 4. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. In mathematics, we have a greater than symbol. Love greater than faith. If I give all I possess to the poor, and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. So the first thing we should, by the way, we never take verses out of context here, okay? There are some verses that stand alone and are timeless, but for the most part. The First Corinthian church was a normal church. I've heard many preachers over the years said, oh, this is a church in chaos. Every church is in chaos because we are in it. And we are not the most definitive of beings, okay? My sin affects you. Your sin affects me, okay? And that sin doesn't stop once I come through the door of a building. But if love is not the motivation for service, then you should stop serving right away. That's what it says. This agape. If you're hoping to get kudos for your service, that is not agape. Let's go to verse 4. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Those things speak for themselves. Verse 5, it does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love is always outward focused. Talk about self-love. My first theology professor, Stan Nelson, he talked about what marriage accomplishes. You know what marriage accomplishes? You single people out there, all of you, you throngs of single people out there, you know what marriage accomplishes? It breaks your narcissism. He called it the great narcissism breaker. Instead of looking at your own navel, you have to look at someone else. Love, agape love, this love that God wants us to have as the motivation for our service, does not look at ourselves and what advantage we get. It always looks outward, and it always has the object in mind. Verse 6, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Truth is a big factor in love. We are told to speak the truth in love in one of the epistles. It's really interesting. I told you in the Old Testament we don't have a word for grace. We have the word that we also use for what they call covenant love. Okay, and we'll talk about this in another sermon down the road here. So we translate that word mercy, but it always incorporates the idea of grace. So this idea of mercy, grace that we sung about earlier, this idea incorporates, always has, the best way to understand some words is what words they're used in conjunction with. So in the Old Testament, the word for grace, the word for mercy, is always used with words that have something to do with truth. Reliability. God is a stand-up guy. God keeps His word. You know, I left Douglas Tabernacle this summer. We had a business meeting. Oh, yikes. I had some mutineers. Jay, we want you to be the pastor. They had already called this fellow. And I said, you have to keep your word. When God says something, He does it. When God speaks, it's truth. This is the problem with society and Jesus. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He's a man just like me, and I know I'm not the truth. Well, if you believe He's the God-man, if you believe He was the perfect sacrifice for your sin, that there is no other way in heaven or on earth by where you can be saved, then you have to believe what He says. C.S. Lewis, remember, posits He's either a liar, a lunatic, a madman, or He is who He says He is. He is the way, He is the truth, He is the life. That's what He said, John 14:6. Truth alongside love. Verse 7. It always protects. Agape always protects. Agape always trusts. Agape always hopes. Agape always perseveres. And we've talked about this before. When I finished the sermon on hope last week, hope and faith spring from love. Now think about this very plainly. It's very simple to understand. And Elizabeth Barrett Browning, I think, was hinting at this in her poem here, okay? If you love, you hope the best for and from the object that you love. If you love someone, you give her the benefit of the doubt. You don't question their motives. You may misunderstand their motives, but you hope for the best from and for the object of your love. If you love, you believe and you trust the object. Verse 8, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away, for we know in part and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. Yeah, you know I watch movies. Ruby, my favorite movie.
Ruby.
Guardians of the Galaxy Part 1. Before that, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. What a wonderful movie. Do you remember Jerry Maguire?
Oh yeah, show me money.
But there's a wonderful quote inside there besides show me the money. When he bursts in on that women haters meeting, could I call it a women haters meeting? The main character bursts in and says to Renee Zellweger, "You complete me." That's an example of agape love. That which is perfect. See, Paul was talking to these people who didn't know how to handle these wonderful gifts that God was giving them. And they had this liberty. We always have liberty. We always have choice. And they were abusing. They were abusing. Some of them were sinning outright. Some of them were not thinking about the brothers and sisters in their midst. And here's what Paul is talking about, is this idea that what you need more than anything. Go look at the last verse, verse 12. You're there. The last verse of chapter 12. Do all have the gifts of healing? Do all speak in tongues? Do all interpret? Now eagerly desire the greater gifts. And yet I will show you the most excellent way. So he's saying, all these gifts of teaching, preaching, all these gifts of help, all these gifts of ministry are nothing if you don't have love. The super excellent way. You want to know how to cancel sin's effect? You want to know if you're using your gifts the right way? Are you loving? Are you reaching out and not thinking about yourself when you're exercising your gifts? Love completes. Love sews it up in a nice little bundle. Here it is. Here is the goodness of God, grace personified. Here is everything that the church is about. The church is about us being the body of Christ, demonstrating to each other what we are missing. Because I need you and you need me. I need Don. I need Brian. I need Bo. We all need each other. And every church has everything it needs. That's what Ephesians says. Every church has everything to complete our mission. Verse 11, when I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Love is a sign of maturity.